let's talk about selling today and how times have changed. Back in the day, it used to be really simple. I would have a fur and you would have a canoe, and we would just simply trade. If we felt that was good exchange of value, we would do what's called this direct exchange. And then they invented currency, right? They invented ways to have this indirect exchange. So no longer did you have to have something that I wanted, because that currency would represent my ability to buy other things. And since then, it's gotten crazy, right? Selling has taken on this whole new role. And over the last 100 years, we're going to talk about how sales have really changed and what's going on in today's marketplace that you can position yourself for success when you're interacting with customers. We're also going to talk about this sort of gap between buyers and sellers and what people are really looking for. But first things first, if you have looked at joegirard.com or joegirard.ca, you're going to realize these are two different people. So if you're thinking that you're talking to this guy, sorry to disappoint, this isn't me. This guy, when we talk about sales history, he was in Guinness Book of World Records, world's greatest salesman, sold all these cars. And so people can come to me sometimes thinking they're looking for him and go, are you the same guy? But I am not this guy. Really nice guy. I have his book signed. He won't sell me his domain, but that's a little bit of sales history for you here. There's people that have gone before us, which is really important for us to know what they've done in the past and how things have changed. Just because the way that we used to sell isn't effective in today's marketplace, it doesn't mean that we don't need to know about it. Because as things change over the next bunch of years, it's important to know how this evolution is happening. And so that's what we're going to talk about. Let me go through a little bit of sales history with you. Back in the 20s, there's a guy named E.K. Strong, and he was really the father of closing. He was the one that came up features and benefits, open and close-ended questions, the AIDA method for selling. And what he was is he wrote the first real professional selling handbook. And these ideas that he has in place are still being used today. So if you've been to a sales training the last little while and you've been talking about probing, objection handling, and closing, that's when it started, almost 100 years ago. But the challenge is that once we've moved out of this transactional selling model, some of those things don't work as well anymore. So that's that feeling that we get when we know we're trying to sell, when we're trying to close people, and it's just not resonating. But what happened is over the years, salespeople started to learn how to manipulate, how to become much more effective, how to be able to start to get in the heads of buyers. And so what they did is they created the professional buyer. Organizations started to create people in their organization specifically to stop salespeople in their tracks, to be part of more of a negotiation rather than being simply pitched to. And so the professional buyer was a role that was created specifically to handle this. And there's even stories where a seller would go in and be pitching their product and using closing techniques, and the buyer would pull out a cue card and say, that was the Benjamin Franklin closing technique, and I'm on to you. You have one more chance or you got to get out of my office. Like, think about it. That's crazy. That's this big divide that we have between selling and buying, and this inherent mistrust that we have. But what happened is as we got more complex and deals got bigger and larger and companies really started to flourish, that in the 80s, there's a great book called Spin Selling by a guy named Neil Rackham, and he did surveys on 35,000 sales calls and people and found out, the different questions they were asking, created this whole model, and I'll have a link below on my training on spin selling. But this era of the consultative model where we really, we ask questions. We did deep diagnosing of customer challenges, and we started to become much more professional, focusing on CRMs, productivity, and using a lot more very highly technical sales processes. But the challenge was as people got busier and busier, going in like an interrogator and asking a ton of questions started to take its toll on salespeople and buyers. So another sort of launch, another jump came in the last probably 5 or 10 years where we started to move into this model of the challenger model, insight selling, where now the buyer has to come already sort of pre-prepared with how to diagnose and how to bring more to the table than just their ability to ask questions and diagnose. So they have to start to demonstrate value right out of the gates. And there's all these ideas that relationship selling is dead. It's not dead, but it's something that you don't start with the relationship. It's something that's earned by your value that you create in the process. So it's a byproduct of you doing a really, really good job. And so this is really what's happened over the last little while is we've created this era where the seller has to bring a ton of value to the conversation. You have to be a strategic partner. You have to be an ultimate resource for your customer, not just somebody who's bringing in information and asking questions. And as we go forward, where sales is going, the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, what we're going to see more is this sort of rebuilding of trust, this rebuilding of a relationship, more meaningful dialogues. And sellers, we need to be, that's why I'm creating this thing called Sales Heroes, because I think we just need to be a lot more understanding of how to help people, how to help them solve these problems, because problems are not going away. The way we do things is going to constantly evolve. And so if you want to constantly evolve with your business, you need to be able to evolve as a sales professional. And that's really what we're talking about. So if we look at it, let me explain a couple numbers for you here. Right now, one of the recent studies is that 60% of the buying process is complete before they even engage with you. And what does that mean? Well, right now, with the ability for us to access our smartphones in our pocket every single day, the access to information is ridiculous. And so buyers are more informed than ever. So they're doing all of this research. They're doing all this work before they even pick up the phone and call you. But as much as they're more informed than ever, they're also misinformed because they're only operating out of this sort of limited frame of reference. And so if you're thinking about people that are calling you and asking you for your help, you have to think about this thing right here. If we know that they're about 60% of the way through the process, you can either wait for them to contact you, and typically you're going to be competing on price, and you're going to be competing in a space that's become predetermined for you, and you're going to be chasing your tail and trying to figure out how to solve this specific problem that they've created. Better than that is if you go before and you start to educate your market and you become the go-to person before they even identify they have a problem. And so this is what we work on when we start to think about insight selling and educating your market, becoming the strategic partner. Are you part of the conversation before they're ready to make the sale? And so this is a big sort of an evolution in how selling is that you need to be thought of before they're ready to buy. Let's go a little bit deeper. Is that 97% of the market is not looking for that specific thing that you're selling. But let me explain further. 3, 7, 30, 30, 30. I love these numbers. I know in Chet Holmes's book, he talks about this as well. But these numbers are really important for you to understand. 3% of the market is active, looking for the specific thing that you offer, and they're trying to figure out the price point. Those are the ones that are filling out your contact form online or picking up the phone and saying, how much is your project A? The 7% is open. They're possibly also filling out contact forms and saying, I'm comparing this versus this. Can you show me the options that you have in this category? But the next 30%, this is where it starts to get fun, is they're aware that they have this problem, but possibly for the future. They may or may not be filling out a contact form, but they are going, let's take a look at our options for this thing. And maybe in 6 months, maybe in a year, hey, we're just shopping around. Have you ever heard that from your customers? Yeah. And so what we do is we make this false assumption that what they're telling us is true. Not because they're trying to lie to us, but because we're allowing them to dictate this purchasing process. And so we sort of go around and say, okay, well, let me know when you think about it. We do this follow-up. We say, hey, I'm just checking in. How are you doing with things? But that problem really never changes. And so we're going to talk about how to tap into that part of the market. But there's even a better part of the market. This is the group that's unaware that they have a problem, that there are solutions for that problem, and that you even exist. And they're also that group that possibly thinks they don't need it. Even if you showed them what it was, they don't think they need it. And then the last group is simply no. And the sweet spot in here is not that 3% of people saying, hey, how much is your project A? But the group that's saying, I've got a problem. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not even sure I have a problem. But as you start to engage with them, they start to say, hey, can you tell me more about that? Oh, what about this? And you start to create opportunities in your marketplace that didn't exist before, rather than simply waiting for people to come to you and say, I'm ready to buy what you have. And so when we look at this disconnect between buyers and sellers, there's all these studies that I love. There's a great group, Corporate Executive Board. I'm going to show you a couple of studies here, but they talk about what do buyers really look for. Most of the time, what sellers think buyers want and what buyers really want are completely different. So let's look at something. Drivers of customer loyalty. If you look at this, about 20%, yeah, they want to know, are you a good company? Does your brand have an impact? Are you reputable to buy from? And when we talk about the buying decisions, you're going to see why this makes sense. The value to price ratio, only about 10%, they say, yeah, it's a good ROI for me. This makes sense. I'm getting a good, bang for my buck. Product service delivery, sure. Did I get what I was looking for? Was it the right product? Did they deliver on time? But 53% of the decision, of the experience, how they're going to be loyal is based on the experience they have with you and how you sell to them. This is crazy to me that when we start thinking about how do we how do we pitch our product? How do we pitch this offer? How do we make sure that we have the best product, the best service, all this kind of stuff? And that's not even half of the equation. The biggest part is you, that you are the buying decision that they're making and your ability to better serve them. And so when you're thinking about, your role in this place, and we're going to talk, what is that real value that you're bringing? I want you to think about these key points here. Is in the purchasing experience. There's 7 key points I love, again, from the Corporate Executive Board. They nailed this perfectly. What buyers want is, 1, they want you to offer them valuable perspectives. They want you to be able to come in and say, here's what's going on. Here's what we're seeing. Here's the cause and effect. Here's some trends. Here's some opportunities. Let's have a discussion on this. Not just here's what my product is. They also want you to be able to help them see not just the other options that you have, but other options that are out there. Whether one of the options is doing nothing, the other one is buying from your competitor, or the third one is buying one of your options, right? You're navigating those alternatives with them. And also, as you're doing this, you're somebody that they can go to for advice, consultation, that you're helping them throughout their complete life cycle, whether they buy from you or not. Then you also help them avoid landmines that they may be looking at. If you're thinking about their 60% of the way through the process and they engage with you and you're good at what you do, you should be able to tell them, hey, you know what? I want to explore this idea with you a little bit further because based on what we're seeing and what's going on, we may be looking at this the wrong way. Helping them avoid landmines is a big long-term strategy, not because you're trying to get them to buy your thing, but because you're actually trying to help them avoid landmines and avoid disaster. And when we talk about how the brain buys in the next section, that's going to make sense. We talk about anticipated regret. Then you start to educate them on new issues and outcomes. And I had somebody ask me the other day, are we going in as educators? Not necessarily, but as part of your role, you need to educate. So what you're doing is as you start to have a discussion, you need to be able to help frame cause and effect. If we do this, then this. But if we don't do this, then this. And you start to show them that these different things are connected and they start to see more value in the conversation. And that is what allows you to drive price and value and actually increase the dollars per sale. Then, are you easy to buy from? I see a lot of people that screw this up, man. They go and make really complex sales processes, maybe just because it makes them feel good or smart, or they're masking something that they're ashamed of. What you need to do is, make this thing super crazy simple so that if somebody wants to make a decision and give you money, let them. That whole if you make it like 10-step process that could be 2, hey, that's on you because you're just missing revenue. You're leaving money on the table. And the last one, as we talked about, as we've moved into this past consultative era, into this insight selling, no longer are buyers, especially in big organizations, going to make big decisions on their own. And even if you think about how you make decisions, when was the last time that you bought a major purchase that you didn't ask somebody's opinion on? That you didn't go and read a review online? If you're going to go to a restaurant, when you asked your friend, and in your organization, does everybody on your team agree to this solution? Do they all buy into this? Now, if we understand that, you also need to know when we start looking at customer profiling, how all of these different personalities are interconnected. So when you're presenting information, that you are gaining widespread acceptance. And so all of this is what buyers are looking for. And you have to ask yourself, am I doing this for them? And so your role, anybody today that's selling and influencing, trying to get somebody to make a decision, is in 3 things. The value that you bring, the insights that you share, and the preparation that you do to set yourself up for success. And I love when I first typed this up, I didn't mean to, but it stands for VIP. This is really what I think sales heroes are all about, is the fact that when you show up ready to help, and you're bringing so much to the table that your buyers would be crazy not to have a conversation with you. And that you're prepared. You're not just going in and hoping, the numbers, that we'll play a numbers game and hopefully one person out of 100 will buy. No, I want to prepare you so that you can go in no matter what industry, what market, whatever you're selling, that you have the highest chance for success with everybody you interact with. So that's kind of what sales is all about, is this is where we're at today. And are you positioning yourself for success? So here's what I want you to do on the worksheet that we've got is think about this for a second. What is your real value? When you show up, it's not just the product that you offer. It's not the service you offer. It's that you're there and you're offering real value. And then the second part is the experience that you want to create. And then why should they meet you? So if you're going to pitch them, when we talk about setting appointments and gaining commitment, when you're selling them on that appointment, why should they talk to you? Right? If you're selling marketing services, you're not selling marketing services. You're going to talk to them about what's happening out there in the marketing world and what are some really cool ways to get more of the right people to buy from you. So let's have a discussion on that. I want to share those ideas with you. So that's how you would sell marketing. That's what the value you're offering. If you're selling printers, you're not selling printers for the sake of how many pieces of paper do you want to print. You're going to have a discussion around efficiencies in the workplace and how to make sure that people are getting the most out of the technology and the equipment they use, especially in this paperless office world, and how to use cloud and all that kind of stuff and make the most of all their resources. For me, I don't just sell sales coaching or training. I want to know that the people I'm helping, that they know they've got some potential in their business. They know they're not living up to that potential. And when we sit down and have a discussion, I'm going to bring some insights about some of the trends that are happening in sales, some of the quick ways that we can create some really good problems that come from increasing sales, and find out what's the best way to use their sales resources. That's what I would do. That's all I'm selling in the first point of contact, is the value of having a conversation with somebody that knows what they're talking about. So what I want you to do on your activity is write down, why the heck should somebody just have a conversation with you, and what's that experience going to be like? In the next video, we're going to talk about how the brain actually buys. We're going to talk about some psychology, neuroscience, cognition, and really what's going on when we're having conversations, so you can avoid this dreaded, like we've talked about, that show up and throw up and just jumping in and saying a bunch of stuff that's probably not going to land the right way. So I'm going to do that on the next video when we talk about how the brain buys. We'll see you there.